gonna click.
We saved the best till the last, Kristen.
That must be it. That must be it. I wanted to also let you know that today it's not just going to be me speaking, which might be refreshing because you always hear from me. We also have Isabel Hachette, who is our programs manager. So I'll just let her introduce herself here or say hi.
Yes, good morning. So yes, I'll be presenting what we're doing in our programs this year. So thanks for joining us.
All right, and let's see, this time I can share my screen. And let me just get into, hang on, sorry about that. There's always has to be technical difficulties. Okay, so this should work now. Okay. Can everyone see the slideshow?
I can see it.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So we will start off. Is it a small or is it on full screen?
No, it's small, Kristen. It's
Small, okay.
Wait.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'm just going to start. Maybe we don't use the slideshow because I can't seem to resume slideshow. It's still small, eh?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. I'm not going to share the slideshow.
Okay.
We'll just discuss. Sorry, everyone. So we'll start off with a land acknowledgement. So we are joining you from the Ottawa-Gatineau region, which is located on the traditional, unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. The Algonquin people have inhabited and cared for these lands long before today. We take this time to show our gratitude and respect to them and to the land for all that it provides us: trees to give shade, water and food to sustain us, and paths to connect us. So thank you for participating in that with me. I'm just going to go to the next part here. So at World Accord, I noticed that first of all, the theme of the conference is courageously respond. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about, how does World Accord courageously respond to what's happening in the sector? And I want to first off say that Isabel and I attended a conference this past week. At the conference, there were dozens of NGOs, small, big NGOs. The Minister of International Development was there, as well as the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it was quite a conversation over the 4 days. And what we learned from this session was that there's a bit of a reckoning happening in the sector. It's time to address power and build equity in international development. We're at a crossroads right now where a lot of organizations are deciding how to respond to this reckoning and how to move towards a model of trust-based philanthropy. Just give me one moment here. So when I talk about trust-based philanthropy, what I mean is that as an NGO, we have a responsibility to confront the ways that our sector as a whole has contributed to systemic inequities, both in the way that wealth is accumulated and also how wealth is distributed and controlled. This history, unfortunately, is entrenched in racism, patriarchy, and other forms of oppression, which are at the root of every social issue that we nonprofits seek to address. As funders to our partners, we must recognize how these norms have shaped, informed, and influenced our entire sector, including who is deemed trustworthy and who is not. To give you an example of this, a lot of when the situation in the Ukraine happened, the international, world gave to Ukraine, and I don't know if the question was asked, can we trust that the money is going to the right place? Whereas that question is often asked when we're giving to other places in the world, like Ethiopia or, Central America. We often say, well, how do we know the money is going to where they say it's going? So it almost seems like this trust is not based on where the money is going, but who the money is going to, and perhaps the color of their skin or the location of where they are in the world. So I wanted you to know that World Accord needs to courageously respond to this shift in the sector. We are now just in the midst of finalizing our 2026 strategic plan, which will be shared with all of you as well once that is, finalized. But I wanted to share with you one key change that we've made to our core values. So we have 6 different core values. One of those values is empowerment. So we have now changed that value from empowerment to decolonization and empowerment. So I'll read out the full value for you. So at World Accord, we value local ownership and decision-making and believe that power shared is power multiplied. Using the principle of working not for, but with, we see World Accord as a social change agent, not a helping organization. Our focus on capacity building by bringing people together leaves space for partners to exercise their power. It is essential that we, staff, board, donors, constantly reflect on and assess how our position of privilege impacts our language, ideologies, policies, representation, and relationships with our partners. It is our responsibility to create spaces for honest conversations, interrogate our own biases, and ensure that diverse representation is on our board, and educate ourselves to ensure Western thought and approaches are not privileged over others. And we aren't just going to make this our wallpaper. We're going to constantly measure ourselves against these values. We want to ensure that when someone donates to World Accord, that you truly are donating to an organization that fosters partner-directed change and authentic women's empowerment, not just the buzzwords. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Isabel to showcase some of the work that our partners are carrying out this year so that you can get a chance to know them a little bit better.
Yes, good morning, thanks. So as Kristen said, I'm Isabelle Hachette and I'm the programs manager for World Accord. So at World Accord presently, we have 4 partners and one in Nepal, which is implementing 2 projects, one of which is funded through Global Affairs Canada. And we have 3 partners in Central America. So to build on what Kristen said, we're also doing localization, which is giving the power to our partners so that they can implement their projects. So they tell us what their needs are after assessing and meeting their community members and key stakeholders. So Women for Peace and Democracy in Nepal is an NGO with whom we've partnered since 2010. And they are now running 2 projects, which are similar in their aim to empower socioeconomic empowerment of women and girls. The Dalit, it's a caste system in Nepal, such as in India. And so the lowest of the caste who are Dalit. So these women are traditionally excluded, would it be socially, economically, and politically. So what Women for Peace and Democracy is doing through self-help groups is empowering them and building on this sisterhood. And what they want to do this year is continue that and strengthen these groups so that they can even become like cooperatives and then be institutionalized and recognized by their own governments. So how are they doing that? They're strengthening, they're enhancing and increasing the self-help community development programs. So they offer, because of the climate crisis and its impacts, they're offering, and all our partners are doing this, but other means of income generating activities, other ideas of income generating activities so that their participants do not solely rely on agriculture. And they're also in Nepal, creating awareness of these women and local agencies, governments, civil society on issues like the climate change, climate crisis, women's rights. They're all working in sexual gender-based violence and the prevention of sexual gender-based violence and decentralization. So that's for Nepal. Now we have 3 partners in Guatemala, 3 partners in Central America, sorry. All of them are small organizations, local, and really contributing to improve the well-being of their communities. In Guatemala, our partner is Mujeres en Acción, Women in Action. So they're working with 150 families, particularly this year, and on organic coffee and avocado. Mujeres en Acción works mainly in agroforestry and organic compost to regenerate the soil and cross-generational sharing of knowledge. So they will work with these families to increase their income and their access to food, as well as thus improving the health. And in order to do that, they're also, like all our partners, relying on alliances so that they can amplify their own voices. And at World Accord, we do that as well. We are part of multiple alliances to increase our power and our voice. In Honduras, we are now partnering with the Asocialayo, which is the Association of Local Agricultural Technology Transfer Committees of Yohoa Lake. So if you knew PRR, you would know that PRR also worked with the CIALES, so these local committees for agricultural seeds, and they're aiming for food sovereignty. So it's a very humbling journey that they're embarking on, and they want to thus preserve their basic grains, especially maize and beans. They're doing that by conducting training on agroecological practices, meeting with the stakeholders, building silos, metal silos to preserve their products and decrease waste, and building irrigation, because Central America is very impacted by the climate crisis. It's one of the regions, according to the World Bank, with other regions, for example, like in Africa, but where it's going to become quite quickly uninhabitable because of the climate crisis. And we see this already with the migration of all these persons that leave this region to try to go to the United States. So with our projects, we also aim to contribute to create dignified jobs in agriculture, and so that youth can also want to stay in their own countries. And finally, in Central America, we have the privilege to work with ATCASMIS, which is in El Salvador, and it's the Association for Community Development, Environment, and Multiple Services. They are a bit like, they've taken a bit of what Mujeres en Acción does with their microcredits, and a bit of what Asocialayo does with their CIALES. And they also are doing a lot of diversified gardens so that their own participants always have access to foods. They found during COVID, and right now there is a big, all those food systems have been totally pulverized, and there's a big famine. There is hunger all over the world. And part of the conference that Kristen talked about at the beginning, it was to address the food crisis that we are facing in Canada as well as elsewhere. So with these diversified gardens, that CASMIS wants to enable their participants to always have access to good food, because they're also using less pesticides. And how do they do this? They train on agricultural practices, the partnerships that I was talking to you about, enabling smallholders also to have access to microcredits so that they can buy their own inputs needed to do the agriculture. And they do demonstration cultivation with new seeds to try to also adapt to the climate crisis. So yeah, that's about it for the programs. And also I just wanted to end that I'm not sure if you were aware that there was a big flood that hit flood with floods. What's her name? Julia, the tornado Julia that hit Central America in late September, so quite recently, or mid-September. And our partners have been very impacted, and many smallholders have lost all their harvests. So we are going to launch a campaign to try to see how we can help them. So that's for me. Yeah, I just want to end with the big impacts. No one can imagine the impacts of the climate crisis on our partners, and there's always crises. It's we don't. It's harder to do longer international development, like with longer term projects, because there's a crisis and a sub-crisis, a tornado, or earthquake, and the climate crisis has a deep impact on women and girls. So anyways, so that's what we're working on in programs.
Thanks so much, Isabel. I mean, that just highlights our need to be very flexible with our funding with our partners. Things change. Things can change any time, any day. So it's our job to be flexible. I wanted to ask the audience a few questions while I have you here. But first, I want to see if you have any questions for Isabel. So if anyone has questions for Isabel, I'll let you ask those now, and then I'll ask my questions. Carmen?
So I take it that we're no longer partnered with PRR.
No, we are no longer partnered with PRR, but Isabel, if you want to
Yeah,
explain.
so we are no longer partnered with PRR per se. However, the Asociación regroup some old colleagues of and friends and team members of PRR, but for reasons out of our we have this new partner, Asociación, and we're working a lot with Asociación to strengthen their whole organizations, including the governance, because to build trust, it's also to have strong organizations, and so that they can deliver on the projects, and thus a strong governing board as well. So we're working very closely with Asociación.
Any other questions?
Bill?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Go, Bill.
Bill here. Wanted to ask whether the Canadian government was still favoring large charitable organizations over small ones.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah, so that was part of the, we have done a lot of advocacy through like the Ontario Council for International Cooperation, of whom Kristen is the president right now. But we also are part of these movements where we, not only does Canada favor large multilateral organizations such as WFP and World Health, and gives a lot to those, more like 83% of aid goes to multilateral organization. I think about 17% goes to the civil society of Canada. And it's a very, very like 0.03% goes to SMO, small, medium organizations. We got funding for Nepal through the Development Impact Window that was initiated in 2017 by the Canadian government, recognizing how SMOs have such a deep impact in their communities with the partners that they are working with. So you are correct. Not only multilateral, but big organizations in Canada, such as the Plan, World Vision, or those types.
Bill Ashwell, did you have a question as well?
Hi. Not so much a question, but just a comment that in January 2018, 6 of us accompanied Dave Barth down to Guatemala for a site visit. And I didn't realize until about a week after we got home how you're talking about, with the hurricanes and like that. And where we stayed, our base was in the city of Antigua. And the big geographical feature out there is the volcano Fuego. And a week after we got home, it erupted big time and just, covered the whole area down there with ash. And I know it hampered and hurt and damaged a lot of the farmers. And it just reminded me today how precarious the environment is down there, whether it's coming from underneath or out of the sky. It's just really, I guess, for lack of a better word, frightening sometimes. So that's just all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Bill. I'm sure it was really something to come back home and then have that happen in the same area where you were, and to see the impact that it had on the communities that you had visited. So yeah, it's very unpredictable, right? And it's hard for us to imagine here. I mean, we have a climate crisis impacting Canada as well, but the people that it often impacts the most are those in the global south. So it's hard for us to imagine. So I have a few other questions. I know we only have 3 minutes. I'm going to post them in the chat as well and then read them out loud. So one thing at World Accord that I think everyone struggles with this, but after going to the reunions, I did see quite a few youth at the reunion. So I'm wondering if anyone on this call has any ideas on how we can involve youth, younger youth, as well as youth between 22 to 30 from the community of Christ in our work. And then we also want to do some fundraising events next year. So we want to see if there's anyone on this call that has ideas for any kind of fundraising events. And last but not least, what do you love the most about World Accord, and what can we improve on? So I'll open the floor to you now. Some questions are easier than others. Lori, did you want to say something?
Yes. First off, I feel I might be a little feminist, which I didn't recognize. Okay, the fact that World Accord is aiming at women services because they are so underprivileged and put down in these other countries makes me very proud to be a participant in donating to World Accord. But to answer the one question of how to get youth, just keep going to those camps and do presentations where they can see in a film, a video, what World Accord is doing in individual communities. Because we still have those work weeks that are there around the world. They really do have value if you present them at youth camps.
Great idea, Lori. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Any other, we have 1 minute and 27 seconds. Anyone else want to chime in?
I'll try one too, Kristen.
Sure.
I would suggest that with the youth, you try competition and reward. They seem to respond to that very well, I think.
So some type of competition.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. That's great feedback. And I see, Bill, you shared in the chat here, the Fastathon has always been a mainstay of awareness and fundraising. So yeah, I agree. And when I went to Zion, Ontario, that was a topic of conversation, is maybe we could do something else like a dance-a-thon, or like some type of a thon where we don't have to fast. There were some folks that mentioned that fasting, they felt kind of contributed to maybe some eating disorders that youth may have. So it wasn't maybe something we shouldn't be doing. But I think there might be some kind of a thon that we can do, especially in Zion, Ontario. So Bill, now since you made that comment, I'm going to be reaching out to you for more ideas. I'm writing down everyone's name and who I'm going to contact.
I've done it now, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. 8 seconds left. So I think at that point, I don't think there's any more time, but I'll see you all in the main room. And thank you so much for listening to what we've had to say and for really engaging. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And hope to see you soon in person also. Have a good day and weekend.